There is a simple camping meal that costs only $2 to make. It will last for 20 years without any refrigerator or freezer. It requires zero power and zero preservatives to stay fresh. It packs an incredible 3,500 calories per pound, which is well over 3 times the caloric density of steaks. Arctic explorers survived entire brutal winters eating this. British soldiers carried this exact food through both world wars. Every single major expedition to the North Pole depended on it. And right now, this food is effectively illegal to sell today. This is not because this particular food is dangerous for your health, but because it is extremely dangerous to a very powerful industry. The global freeze-dried food market now generates over $32 billion in global revenue every single year. A simple meal that costs $2 and never spoils is a massive threat to everything that extremely profitable industry needs. They did not stop teaching it because the food recipe failed. They stopped teaching it because it worked far too perfectly. A food that costs pennies and lasts for decades without power cannot be packaged in a fancy pouch and sold for 12 bucks. And what you cannot package for retail cannot generate profit. This is the extraordinary and true story of pemmican. It is the original survival meal that fed empires across centuries and was then systematically buried by the modern food system. Let us go all the way back to where this all began in 1541. The Spanish explorer Coronado was on his way across what is now called the Texas Panhandle hunting gold. He did not find any gold, but he found something far more rare. The Carecos people he met were living on the open grasslands with no permanent shelters, no farms, and no granaries in sight. Yet every single one of these indigenous people was thriving. Coronado watched in fascination as they dried thick bison meat under the blazing sun until each strip was as hard as dry wood. Then they pounded the brittle dried meat into an extremely fine powder using heavy flat stones, smoothed by generations of work. They mixed the meat powder with hot rendered melted animal fat and pressed the entire mixture into thick portable cakes. That single type of food sustained whole nations for thousands of years. Before any European explorer set foot on this continent, indigenous peoples had perfected this recipe. The Cree people have their own very special name for it, pemmican. The word translates directly into English as manufactured grease. The Lakota Nation called their own version wasna, meaning fat. The Blackfoot and the Métis people each had their own methods. Every tribe refined their specific recipe over many lifetimes. Some added dried Saskatoon berries for both flavor and energy. Others used cranberries or tart in dried chokecherry fruits. The result was always identical regardless of which tribe made it. An incredibly dense food where 1 pound fed a man all day. In 1779, a fur trader called Peter Pond first brought pemmican into the established European trade networks. That single introduction completely changed global exploration. The powerful Northwest Company built their full supply system around this one indigenous food. Voyagers paddling their canoes across thousands of icy miles of brutal and frozen Canadian wilderness survived on pemmican. One single bison could produce around 90 pounds of it, and that amount would feed 6 men across 500 harsh miles. Pemmican became so strategically valuable and so very critical that in 1814 a real armed war broke out over it. Governor Miles MacDonald of the Red River Colony then issued the infamous proclamation that banned all pemmican exportation. The Métis people, who had controlled this profitable trade for decades, absolutely refused to comply with this new restriction. What followed was called the Pemmican War, and it drew blood. This was an actual armed military conflict over a $2 camping food. Take a moment and think very carefully about what that means. A food so powerful and strategically vital that it caused war. A food so critical that whoever controlled its supply gained full control over an entire territory and all of its commerce. Let us talk about what is actually inside pemmican and why the numbers are so extraordinary. A single pound of traditional pemmican contains up to 3,500 calories. To put that into perspective, a pound of cooked ground beef has about 150 calories. A pound of white rice has around 590 calories. A standard freeze-dried camping meal from the store weighs about 4.5 ounces and contains roughly 300 calories. That means 1 pound of pemmican delivers the same energy as nearly 12 of those expensive freeze-dried camping pouches. 12 pouches that cost $8 to $12 each at any outdoor retail store. That is over $100 worth of commercial camping food replaced by $2 worth of pemmican. The macronutrient profile is extraordinary as well. Traditional pemmican is approximately 80% fat and 20% protein by calorie, with almost zero carbohydrates unless you add berries. That ratio is not random, and it is not an accident of history. Fat contains 9 calories per gram, while protein and carbohydrates contain only 4. By packing the food with rendered animal fat, indigenous peoples created the most energy-dense, portable food physically possible. A study referenced in the Journal of Health, Population, and Nutrition confirmed that the combination of thoroughly dried meat sealed in hot rendered fat creates an environment where pathogenic bacteria simply cannot survive. The moisture content drops so low that microbial life has nothing to feed on. The hot fat sterilizes the surface of the dried meat during mixing, and the solidified fat creates an airtight seal that prevents oxygen from reaching the protein. This is the same preservation principle behind canned food and vacuum sealing, except pemmican was invented thousands of years before either technology existed. During the Second Boer War from 1899 to 1902, British soldiers received an iron ration consisting of 4 ounces of pemmican and 4 ounces of chocolate. Military records confirm that a man could march for 36 hours on that single ration before physical collapse. The explorer Vilhjalmur Stephenson lived among the Inuit people and documented families eating pemmican that had been stored for years in animal hide bags without any spoilage whatsoever. Now here is where the numbers should make you angry. A single freeze-dried meal pouch at a major outdoor retailer costs between $8 and $12. It weighs 4 to 5 ounces and provides roughly 300 calories. The global freeze-dried food market generates over $32 billion in revenue every year. That is $32 billion selling you lightweight pouches of food that expire in 3 to 5 years and cost more per calorie than eating at a restaurant. Meanwhile, pemmican costs approximately $2 per pound to make at home. It provides over 3 times the calories per ounce of any freeze-dried competitor. It lasts not 3 years, not 5 years, but potentially decades without any refrigeration. And here is the part that should make you furious. In 43 states across America, it is effectively illegal to sell homemade pemmican. The United States Department of Agriculture classifies all meat products under federal regulation. Cottage food laws in the vast majority of states explicitly prohibit the sale of dried meat, jerky, and any product containing animal protein prepared in a home kitchen. When the state of Maine tried to include meat in its food freedom legislation, the USDA intervened directly and forced the state to remove the provision. Think about what that means. A food that indigenous peoples perfected over thousands of years, that explorers trusted with their lives, that literally caused a war because of how valuable it was, is now illegal for you to sell from your own kitchen. You can buy a $12 or freeze-dried pouch of pasta with a 3-year shelf life at any camping store, but you cannot sell a $2 portion of pemmican with a 20-year shelf life from your home. The freeze-dried food industry does not need to ban pemmican from existing. They just need to ban you from selling it. And they have. You cannot patent pemmican because the recipe is thousands of years old. You cannot create a proprietary version because the process is 3 ingredients and 0 technology. You cannot generate subscription revenue because one batch lasts for years. The entire economic model of the packaged outdoor food industry depends on foods that expire, that need to be repurchased, and that require expensive processing equipment to manufacture. Pemmican represents everything that economic model opposes. It is cheap, it is permanent, and it is self-sufficient. So the system did what it always does with things it cannot control. It classified pemmican as a food safety risk, regulated it into commercial kitchens that cost thousands of dollars to operate, and made absolutely certain that the average camper would never learn the recipe their ancestors considered the most important food on earth. Now here is what you actually need to do to make pemmican at home. Step 1. Get lean meat. Beef is the most accessible, but venison, elk, or bison are traditional and work even better. Slice the meat as thin as physically possible, thinner than jerky, almost paper thin. Step 2. Dry the meat completely. Use a dehydrator set at around 155 degrees or an oven on the lowest setting with the door cracked open. The meat is ready when it snaps cleanly when you bend it. If it bends like jerky, it is not dry enough and your pemmican will not last. Step 3. Grind the dried meat into a fine powder. Use a blender or food processor until the texture resembles coarse flour. Historically, indigenous peoples used heavy stones to pound the meat, but a blender works perfectly. Step 4. Render your fat. Use beef suet or tallow. Cut the fat into small pieces and heat slowly on low temperature. Never let it smoke because that means the temperature is too high and the fat will taste burnt. Strain the liquid fat through a cheesecloth or fine mesh to remove any solid pieces. Step 5. Mix the powdered meat with the hot liquid fat at a ratio of roughly 1.1 by weight. If you want to add dried berries like cranberries or blueberries, now is the time to mix them into the warm mixture. Step 6. Pour the mixture into a lined pan or mold and let it cool completely at room temperature. Once solid, cut it into bars or portions and store in airtight containers or sealed bags. A single batch costs about $2 in ingredients and produces enough to sustain one person for multiple days of hard outdoor activity. Compare that to spending $50 to $100 on freeze-dried meals for the same number of days at any outdoor store. A bushcrafter in Montana documented making a batch of pemmican and testing it after 18 months of storage in a simple glass jar at room temperature. The pemmican was perfectly edible with no change in taste or texture whatsoever. Pemmican is not going to taste like a gourmet meal. It is dense, fatty, and has an intense, meaty flavor that takes getting used to. Some people love it immediately, while others need a few tries before they appreciate it. But this is survival food, not restaurant food. The Korean Lakota did not optimize for flavor. They optimized for keeping their people alive across the harshest winters on Earth. And that is exactly what it does. Better than anything the modern outdoor food industry has ever produced. This knowledge did not die. It was waiting in dusty journals and fading oral traditions for someone to unearth it. Pemmican fed nations, sustained fur traders across frozen continents, and fueled expeditions to both poles. Today, you can make it in your kitchen for $2. No factory, no freeze dryer, and no expiration date. Just meat, fat, and the knowledge your ancestors carried for thousands of years. If this story changed the way you look at the food in your pantry, please subscribe and like the video. We are unearthing the history and survival secrets that the modern industry has tried to bury. Join us as we reclaim the self-sufficiency of our ancestors. The next vault of forbidden knowledge will open very soon.